I don't see myself on the screen. Okay, can you see me?
In case anybody can see or hear me, we're having.
Go ahead and turn your mic in. All right, they can hear you though, Terry.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry guys, I guess my camera goofed up here. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in this world. Glad you're here for our Sunday Letting Go class with Guy Finley. My name is Terry. If this is your first time here, welcome. You're in for a treat. And hi to all of you returning aspirants. So our Sunday class as always entails Guy first coming on and giving a talk for about 50 minutes to an hour, after which time we will have a 5-minute break video. You can get yourself a cup of coffee, come back on, and we'll have a Q&A that will last probably approximately 25-30 minutes or so. And that will be the extent of class. Everything is recorded and will be available for re-listen as well after. So without further ado, I think we can go ahead and bring Guy on. Hopefully I'll be able to see him. There, I can see you. Hi. Would you like me to read the topic and key lesson for today?
Yes, please.
All right. The title for today's talk is A Powerful New Insight to Release You from Painful Resistance to Life. And the key lesson reads as follows. Awakening is the sudden and often quite shocking realization that what we had taken to be the whole of our life isn't, any more than you can see the whole of a starry night through a skylight. Okay, Guy.
Thanks, Terry. Welcome, everyone. We are, as you know, working out the wrinkles in our system. Even as I speak, we're working out wrinkles. Anyway, it's good that you're here. I'm glad that we're together. I would ask today, really in one way, no different than I do in any other day, for your full attention. I want to cover some important ideas with you. At least I hope are important ideas to you. If in any way whatsoever you want to understand why it is that wherever you go, there seems to be some kind of pain waiting for you there. It's extraordinary that we can live as many years as we have lived, speaking for myself, and never really suspect what is going on, other than I continue to run into conditions that seem to be conflicting with my wishes, my hope. And then I meet those, as I always do, with whatever reaction comes up in me that tells me what it is that's happened, and then I realize in quotes what I have to do. I take those steps, and I just take those steps, and I take those steps, and it just never ends. And at some point, a man or a woman wants to come to an end of this strange merry-go-round of misery with unwanted moments. And at that point, they have to ask themselves, what do I need to do? I realize I'll never be at peace with the moment itself until I am at peace with myself. How can I be at peace with the moment if I'm not at peace within myself? And at least that begins to turn us around, what Christ called metanoia. Begin to turn around and be interested in what it is that's going on. And then if we do our work, we start to gather certain important ideas. I spoke about a couple of these yesterday. I don't know whether you had a chance to listen to it. I know it gets posted here on our website. But I talked about something called natural inevitability and something that connected to it, divine inevitability. And ever so briefly, because it sets the stage It's why it's important to stay in touch, stay close. What you are learning isn't so much what you're hearing, but you are learning to hear in a new way these moments, what they are trying to tell you about yourself. That's what this work is about, not to follow someone or to be identified with any particular ideology. This natural inevitability, it was simply a way of saying that there's nothing in nature that isn't always being acted on, and not even moment to moment, any more than a river flows moment to moment. Our mind divides that up. But the river is a seamless movement, a circulation that takes place on this planet, where everything participating in the movement of that river, everything that lives from the waters, the whole of that grand natural circulation, it's inevitable that every creature in that circulation is acted on by those forces inherent in moving all of that it moves. And because it's inevitable that they're acted on, it means that it's inevitable that they aren't brought into that circulation, not separate from it, but being completed through it, because the whole movement is the completion of all the creatures at that point in time. Is that confusing? And I said, well, if that's true, that seems so nice. I wish I was a palm tree. I am a little bananas. Why can't I just be a blade of grass? A zucchini. We're close to the zucchini level. Divine inevitability. What does that mean? As above, so below. If it's true with the blade of grass, the bird that falls from the sky, if that's true with these little things, why isn't it true with me when it comes to my relationship with the divine? Since the divine inevitability is what gives rise to natural inevitability. As above, so below. Can I take that understanding into my life? Because if I do, at least I have a new context for these moments where I'm in conflict. Because it means the conflict isn't in the divine inevitability of me being acted on by what is godly or good. The conflict's in this consciousness that somehow or other doesn't see the good in the moment. It only sees what it doesn't want to see, by and large, what it blames. So this idea of natural inevitability and divine inevitability. But here's why I'm starting out like this. So I got a couple emails, questions. Well, if it's divine, people always want to fight, by the way. If it's divine inevitability, then what's wrong with me? I mean, why isn't it inevitable that I find Christ, that I wake up and know something about God, that I'm not liberated? It's divine. What's the hang up? You want to know? That's what we're going to talk about. What's interfering with this divine inevitability? Because it should be clear that something's going on. And yet, from time to time, if you have an epiphany, it's as if this beautiful wave of a fresh breeze or a waterfall suddenly cascades, and all this crud that was clinging to you is just washed away. And when you are washed away, cleaned, if you will, then in a moment you're saying that, well, of course I can see that. And then you can see it was inevitable that you see that because it was part of something you had yet to understand, because you were still clinging to all these old ideas. How could you see what you couldn't see at that point in time? I've just spent 8 minutes with this introduction, way too much time, because I have to walk you through something that some of us are going to like a lot and some of us aren't going to like so much. Because our minds are what? Some of us are very mental, intellectually oriented, some of us are pure emotion, others just want the sensation. We need all of these things to look, listen, and sense all at once. That's what we do these talks for. So I want to give you a big picture today of what is interfering with this divine inevitability. So I don't know if you've noticed this somewhat recently in the scheme of things. The whole idea of boundaries has become very significant, hasn't it? We ask, speaking as an individual, we ask that, or demand in one way or another, that people recognize and respect our boundaries. This is very important. You go to work, you're not respecting my boundary. And it never actually occurs to us that what is it within us that isn't just setting these boundaries, but that sets armed guards at the stations of the boundaries. And you should be obviously aware that there's ready to shoot first, ask questions later when it comes to somebody trespassing on this valuable ground called whatever you name your life to be? Yes or no? Is that nice? Yes? Yes. What is it inside of me, please follow this, that believes that the boundaries it makes protects it when it is locked behind those boundaries and afraid of anything that's going to come into it and jeopardize this sacred space called my experience? And so we wind up guarding experiences that we don't want by blaming individuals for trespassing, and we never ask ourselves, what in the name of God are these boundaries? Who set them? Could I possibly set a boundary that when someone passes it causes me to become a maniac? Because the boundary seems to be intelligent, doesn't it? Even sensitive. But I'm asking you to see, is it really, can we separate these boundaries from the moments when we feel bound by them? That would be the question. Can we separate the moments we feel someone's trespassed these boundaries from how we are bounded by them? Am I not bounded by them? I spoke about limitation yesterday. My anger when you trespass is a limitation that I blame on you for not respecting my boundaries. Now, I'm just using that word boundaries as a general term. You'll see that this isn't so much about boundaries, but about the nature that sets them. Because you're a fool if you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Children need boundaries. Adults need boundaries. You live with someone who's abusive, you need a boundary, but the boundary isn't hating them for trespassing. The boundary is, I'm not going to live in the same world that you do, because to do that means I'm enabling you and I'm not going to do it. So to understand boundaries is not a simple thing, but I want you to understand we're not just tossing out the whole idea of it. Where do we start? What am I bound by? Let's go back to the original question. How can I be at peace with my pain? How can I make peace with my pain? I know I have to, because if I don't, I'm never going to be free. How do I do that? I have to look at where that pain appears and what causes it to appear. If I immediately know, which all of us think we do, what's causing that pain, I'm dead in the water. And I get to relive a certain dark circulation of an unconscious nature, validating the pain it feels for its conflict with someone that it can blame for that pain. So where are we bound? Where do we start? And adding this, and doesn't it depend on conditions? Have you ever noticed you can be sitting at home by yourself and you don't need anybody. You step over your own boundaries. It's a miracle. My mind brings up something that someone didn't do or someone said about the past or a future I fear, and suddenly my boundaries are threatened. But threatened by a memory? Or threatened by something taking place in an unconscious nature that I'm unaware of? And the answer is, I'm simply unaware of the fact that without knowing it, I am a walking no trespassing sign. Haven't you noticed that? You could be happy as a clam someplace and someone walks by and suddenly they didn't do anything, but they have trespassed. They've messed with your boundary that you didn't know you had until they said, walked by, or did the unmentionable, which you didn't even know was unmentionable until they did it. And then up comes the armed guard. No trespassing. So what? So let's put that together. So somehow there is this sudden sense of somebody trespassing. I'm trapped. I feel this contraction. And if I suddenly feel this contraction, well, what causes that contraction? I've had some kind of a reaction. A negative reaction of some kind has caused the experience of this contraction. Now, the problem is the reaction is so habitual and familiar that I immediately know who to fire on as responsible for the suffering I'm in that moment. But I want to look at this very different with you. I want to understand, can this sudden negative reaction over what? I didn't even know that I had a boundary line drawn there. You ever notice you can be in one mood, you got no boundaries at all. Isn't it true? No problem. And then a phone call, an email, 10 minutes later, the same person. Boundary. And then I blame them instead of understanding what in me has come up to create that boundary that I am now bound by. And I feel bound to do what when someone triggers me? What am I bound to do? Another word. What am I bound to do? Fix them. I'm bound to ensure that whatever it is that has been threatened is no longer threatened. It's a requirement of the reaction. I didn't know that every reaction came with a requirement. Do you know that? No, you don't know that. Every reaction you have comes with a requirement. Can you imagine how, you want to know why you're so tired all the time? Because I have so many responsibilities. I didn't even know were mine until I had this reaction. Then I got to go make sure everybody's okay, which is another talk altogether. Maybe next week I want to talk about codependency. But let me stay on track. So this fearful, angry sense of self feels there is always some threat proportionate to the resistance it feels. Some threat proportionate to the resistance it feels, yes? So the size of the threat can't be separated from the sense of myself that feels threatened by whatever that may be. So now we have some new information. Apparently, whatever it is that's going out there isn't really the problem, because I'm in cahoots. That's a very old word by Cracky. I'm in cahoots, complicit, with whatever it is that's like waiting to put out an electrified fence, so that in that moment I can repel whatever it is that's repulsing me. Can you be repelled without being repulsive? Never mind. So you get this much. So at our present level, which we're always talking about, it's not fixed, no judgment, we see, if you want to use those words, we experience these natural reactions, these negative reactions, as being natural. Don't you? To us, this negative reaction is natural, which means somehow or other, to me, it's natural to be angry at myself or another human being. That feels natural to me. And yet, if we examine that moment, how can I have anger towards you or towards myself unless prior to that moment I came into it knowing that there was a certain kind of boundary that was required, that if anyone should trespass or if I should see something in myself that threatens this image I have of myself, we're bringing in a new idea, then a boundary has been broken. So somehow or other, these images and ideas that we have about ourselves can't be separated from the boundary that we meet in those moments when somebody threatens what I believe myself to be or the image I have of myself. I'm a very loving person. And when I'm not, it's not because I'm not loving. It's because you aren't. That's the end of the story. As far as I'm concerned, why? My reaction tells me so. And that's all I know, is to listen to, respond from some form of resistance to the moment because something is trespassed. And once it's trespassed, the only solution to someone who is trespassed is to repel the invader. So I look at life, not just people. I look at the traffic, I look at the weather, I look at all of this as somehow or other, God didn't get He didn't see my fence line, because in here I'm free, out there I'm free unless you happen to be there or something's going on that I don't want. And we live like that forever, doing what? We're always trying to restore or protect what we think is some kind of lost balance. We're on to another understanding. Something's upset my balance. I was balanced prior to looking at you. And suddenly, have you not had that? Are there not people in your life that when you look at them, Danger Will Robinson, there's a host of stuff comes up, and you don't have to look at somebody. You can just think about somebody, and it comes up. We call it keeping accounts. And all of a sudden, I feel threatened by someone who's dead. How is that possible? Something in me is keeping these boundaries in place that I don't know are in place, and all I need to do is my own thought threatens me. It's a phenomena when you see it, which is why we have these talks. I'm threatened by my own thoughts because I can't see my consciousness holds one position, and in order to hold that position, it must have that which is pushing against it. It requires it. Now that's deep. I'm going to get to this. In the physical world, we're subject all the time to different things, and I'm going to go through a little bit of physics with you. Please don't go to sleep on me. I'm going to explain it as thoroughly as I can. What we're examining here is, what if the condition that we resist, we all agree we summarily, suddenly resist conditions. We summarily, suddenly resist our own reactions, our own thoughts and feelings. What if what we resist is inseparable from the resistance that we feel towards the moment? Here I am, I resist you, and I believe that the feeling I have cannot be separated from the you that has brought it up. Meaning, we are, whether we see it or not, in a codependent relationship. We are tied together. But listen to this, not physically, psychologically. So that my instantaneous measurement of you, if you're not performing to the pre-imagined measurement, finds you coming up short. And when you come up short, what am I supposed to do other than what? I resist your limitation. I summarily try to fix it, or I avoid the circumstance. Either way, whether I am active or passive, whether I'm defensive or aggressive, it makes no difference. I am still doing what? What is going on in those moments? I'm living from a nature that doesn't know and cannot be anything other than what it is. Now, let's look at what it is. This is where you have to wake up a little bit, everybody. In the physical world, I'm going to walk you through Newton's laws, but don't worry about it, okay? You'll see how applicable this is. We're familiar, I hope we're familiar with the idea that in any closed system, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. This is a law. Any closed system, energy can't be created. New energy can't come into a closed system. Closed system can't create new energy. All that closed system can do, like a circulation, is transform all that is inside of that system, which is what we see in nature. Natural inevitability. I said yesterday, nature adapts. It doesn't transcend. Nature adapts. It doesn't transcend. We think nature's progressing. Nature's not progressing. Nature is adapting to the conditions that require it to make these changes in that system, so that the cellular activity, literally the energetic fields, they are constantly adapting, not transcending, adapting to their environment. Why? Because their environment is acting on them. So it's a closed system. You understand that with me? Now, what does that mean? Besides that it can't be created or destroyed, this energy, it is always being rearranged. Now, little lesson, watch closely. I don't know where you are right now. And this isn't perfect, but it's the best I can do. And you'll see me reach off this camera here. I'm pushing against the wall. Push against the chair you're sitting in, or anything. Now, prior to pushing on that, were you aware of your body? No. Suddenly, when I push on something, and this is a phenomena, it isn't pushing back. We think that the opposite is pushing back. It's not. It appears in the same moment in direct proportion to the energy being exerted. So what I feel isn't the wall pushing back. What I feel is the energy that I'm experiencing in this system that's closed. That's the best I can do. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Does not mean one happens and then the others. It happens simultaneously. So that what I'm experiencing isn't just the resistance of the wall, isn't just the resistance of the chair. What I'm experiencing is the relationship sensually that's produced by this nature resisting its own energy. It resists itself. I hope I didn't lose you. I'm not terribly thrilled with what I said. The force of what is active creates an equal and corresponding force that opposes it. This is a familiar idea to most of us. Like I said, every action, equal opposite reaction. What we don't fully comprehend is that in this moment where there's an equal and opposite reaction, there's no one making a choice. I'm not choosing to experience the resistance that takes place when I push against this wall. There's no choice. This body experiences the closed system of its own energy. There's no choice. But when you and I run into a moment and something suddenly is resisting us because we think that the reaction, the resistance, we think is a choice. Don't you think when you resist a moment, it's your choice? Now, what if what you call your resistance to a moment that you don't want isn't a choice made by you, but is made by a closed system that you don't know you're a captive of? Because that's what a mechanical mind is. That's what the sleeping mind is. It's a closed system. And every bit of our pain, all of the emptiness, every last part of it is intimately connected to the fact that we keep trying to get out of the system by pushing against it. So that every action produces exactly the opposite, only not always immediately. Have you not noticed you can do certain things and a year, 10 years later, whatever it is, comes all of a sudden this stuff comes. Where'd that come from? And if God could talk, you say, well, you don't remember that, in 1972 when you smoked that joint or whatever you did. It's come back because it never went away. It was always sitting inside of this system, waiting for the moment to have this equilibrium, which nature attends to in this closed system. So we're trying to escape the system of a nature that creates mechanical resistance by letting resistance tell us how to get out. I'll slow down. I just want you to see. Are you able to follow me? So reaction is evidence of a limitation revealed by contact. A reaction is evidence of a limitation revealed by contact. What does that mean? When you look at any living creature, we're not talking about human beings right now, just a blade of grass, a tree, bush. There is only so much energy that creature can take in. Sunlight, all the forces, celestial, planetary, there's only so much energy that creature can take in. And we know the creature takes in this energy because as creatures, blades of grass, trees, bushes, they take that energy and it allows them to take part in this transformation that's part of their adaptation to their environment. So that they're constantly being changed, are they not, by the system they're in, even though they can't change anything about the system and they can't change how they respond to the system. It's just a part of that movement. Please, yes? I hope you're able to go with me on this. Now, at a certain point, that blade of grass, that tree, it can't absorb all of the active will. It can't absorb everything that is acting on it. It can't do it. And what it can't absorb, it pushes back. You wouldn't see color if dark matter wasn't resisting a certain frequency of light, and that's what you call color, is the resistance of the matter being acted on. Because it can't absorb all of that energy. It only absorbs certain kinds of energies. And that's true with everything. Still with me? Now, when it reaches the max, what happens? All of the energy that can't be absorbed accumulates at the boundary between itself and what's acting on it. Have you ever felt this? Like a choo-choo train and then poo. Why? Because I can only take so much. And suddenly it's evident that I've got to push back. There's a boundary here. It's gone past it. Well, now a tree can't go, Mr. Sun, that's about as much as I can take. A bird can't go, let me out of here. But it will seek shade. all of these natural actions that we see in natural creatures are the result of this system balancing itself as best the creatures are entitled to do, given what? It can only take in so much, and then the rest is resisted, and when it's resisted, it's turned into another kind of energy that completes the circuit. So what happens? A stimulation arrives of some kind. An organism can't assimilate it smoothly. I mean, try to see this. If there were a system within which, and whether you know it or not, you are in that divine system, cannot be quantified, qualified. But if an organism could perfectly receive all of the energy, so that it was in this perfect relationship of yin and yang, in this perfect relationship of constant, not just transformation of the instances inside of that circle, but everything being transformed at the same time, there would be no resistance at all. There'd be no resistance at all, none, because it could perfectly take in and use every energy that was given to it. That's called love. This perfect reconciliation of what is active and passive with no hitch in it whatsoever, so that there is all the time, if you can see this with me, this process by which there's no energy accumulating at the borders, at the boundaries. And just a fascinating fact, have you noticed sometimes that the more you think about someone or some moment, something that threatens you, the more you think about it, the more defined the boundary becomes? Have you not seen that? Why? Because the energies, as it accumulates, it's actually creating and strengthening the boundary that you're trying to escape by thinking about it, and it can't be done. So this energy is a creation and inseparable from what? What is this energy we're talking about? Can you separate it from the resistance that it creates, that creates it? Isn't the energy we're talking about that cannot, at a certain point, I can't go past this, isn't it being created by this resistance I have? So something's acting on me and something's pushing back. Now, at our level, or at least at the level of nature, all nature can do with this relationship is do what? Fight or flight. It's a totally binary reaction. It's not going to think its way out. First of all, they're better off because they can't think their way out. One of the things we love about dogs. It's not thinking its way out. It has only a series of measured responses connected to fight or flight or some variation on the theme. But when we talk about anything other than that, where we can see one more time, does the bush get to choose what it can take in and what it can't, or what it does with the energy that's left over? Or it's choiceless, isn't it? But clearly a choice is being made for it to live. So a choice is being made. It's the expression of that choice, but it is choiceless as to the system it's in, because it cannot change the system. It can only participate in its movement. Our psychological life is absolutely no different. Our psychological life is absolutely no different. Spiritually speaking, we know that each moment of life, please, if you can see this, we know that each moment of life is without some predetermined boundary. It's kind of what we love when we go into nature. There's no boundaries there. In fact, we go into nature because we want to open ourselves so that there can be this full circulation, an experience of something without resistance. Why do people think they, the ocean, or go to a river, or watch a waterfall? Because there's no boundaries there. I'm not resisting, I'm receiving. So there's this incredible difference between these systems. Psychologically, we are almost never receiving, rather we are almost always resisting. And if you can put this together, what is it in me that is always resisting in one way or another what someone does or doesn't do, a situation I want or don't want? What is it that causes this resistance in me, if you're still following? I went in believing that you weren't that way. I went in hoping that it would be like this. I went in sure, confident that I was going to be able to control these things. And suddenly life says, I don't think so. And when life says, I don't think so, what do you say? Are you talking to me? Isn't that it? Boom, resistance. Now, how many times would a man or a woman believe that resisting some moment or some relationship and then following the dictates of the reaction that produces that resistance, how many times would a person believe that there's some intelligence operating there? And then you go, a long time. That would be the answer. That's how long that goes on, a really, really long time. Now, how can that go on a really long time unless, in quotes, the nature that is full of this resistance, unless it's getting some perk from it? What's the perk that this nature that is in a closed system? I just want to keep drilling this in. I'm living in a closed system that believes that because it can imagine an open circulation where you're not a problem and I'm the king, that means that exists. And yet life keeps showing you what you imagine from inside the closed circle closes the circle more fully. So, what does this psychological creature do when this happens? Well, first of all, is the psychological creature any different from a raccoon that's, cornered in a house someplace? Fight or flight. That's what this psychological nature does. Now, the problem is the raccoon suffers a lot less than you do. It really does, because it's not sitting measuring. It's not thinking about what this means and what's the best way to deal with it, because I still want you to like me. Look, I have to snarl at you, but please, I'm not really that snarly. I'm going to jump on you and grab your throat, but you made me do it. Just understand that, and then we'll be great friends. So I'm being silly, but you get the picture here. So in the psychological world, this closed system, now listen one more time, that cannot choose, but believes it can. So its choices are imaginary. They don't feel imagined. Do you think to you when you're negative that these choices I'm making are imagined? Well, where are you getting the choices from? The content of the closed system. Where are my choices from? The past, knowledge, in quotes, experience. So that's part of this closed system that I keep turning to, because I believe if I just repeat the same thing with a small variation on the theme, I won't be a victim anymore of something. And yet every variation belongs to the closed system, which ensures the resistance remains in place, and so does my pain when someone steps on my toes. Are we making contact? Okay. What's that about? What's this resistance about? Resistance is the glue that holds this sense of self together. It is a psychological glue, literally a psychological glue. Better than gorilla, what do they call that?
Gorilla glue.
Gorilla glue. Talk about a monkey on your back. Never am I more sure who I am than when I'm the most resistant to something that I don't want, or flip side, with something that I do want, because I believe if I get it, I'll escape the pain of the resistance that creates the desire to begin with. So resistance glues together this sense of self that does not see that what it is identified with, that it hopes to escape, takes with it the nature that has created the condition it hopes to be free of. And this is why, and I ask you to see it, does any negative reaction, has it ever actually resolved a disturbance? Or does it kick the can down the road? Because there are people, we all know people, we're all afraid. You want to see somebody afraid? Just have somebody, let somebody look at you the way they're not supposed to. It doesn't even matter who they are. They can just look at you. And they're not supposed to look at you like that. Isn't it true? Have you ever looked in the mirror and think you're not supposed to look? I mean, it just ain't nothing. But then I don't see it. What I'm opposing doesn't exist without what is opposing it. if there weren't something opposing the moment, because it has come into the moment confident about how it's supposed to go, there would be nothing for me to be set against. They appear together, and we don't know they appear together. Why? Because the closed system divides me up into that which is acting and that which is being acted on. So I'm never aware of this resistance as impossible solution. Just, if you're still with me, what would happen, God willing, to a mind that one day starts to feel this resistance and it recognizes, right out of Star Trek, resistance is futile. But it doesn't think it. It's so many times it's not wanted you to be like this. So many times it's been impatient or angry because they did this. So many times, and one day you start to feel that and you go, I don't know what else to do, but I know that that's not the answer. And I know that even if you have, in quotes, crossed a boundary, again, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's not my responsibility to make you respect my boundaries. I don't know if you've noticed, the more you try to get people to respect your boundaries, the more sensitive you are to them crossing them. Yes or no? Yes. You know, I set this rule. And then the person who's afraid of you, because anytime do you know that there is a certain relationship with humanity where the more negative you are, the more command you seem to have over others who don't want to become negative or be brought into a negative place with you. And so there's this dependency. Imagine a world that has become dependent on negativity. I'm describing to you the planet. If it was dependent on love the way we say it is, then we wouldn't have this circulation of conflict. But we have conflict because the resistance never stops, because it's part of a closed system we don't know that we are the instrument of, that we're incarnating. I got to keep going. So reactions, negative reactions never resolve disturbances. They just ensure their continuity. Why? Energy meets energy. Nothing transcended, just this closed system of you push, I pull, you push. That's all that's going on. Now, this is not a moral failure. Let me get clear here. This is no judgment of this. It is, I know it's hard not to personalize, it is a structural limitation of a closed system. This resistance and the identity it creates is a structural limitation of a closed system. You and I don't think we live in a closed system. We blame the government for being a closed system. We blame everyone and everyone around us for being closed off and not open to the intelligence that we bring with us. We live in a closed system. This is what it means to be spiritually asleep. This is what happened to the people in Plato's cave. They saw the shadows. They thought they were real. They were in a closed system where all they could respond to were shadows that weren't real. A closed system. If I, in fact, live in a closed system, there should be some evidence of it. And what evidence is it that I'm in a closed system? I run into an endless experience of people crossing a boundary, of a moment that didn't align properly, of a situation that shouldn't have settled the way it did. My mind is flooded all the time with all of these thoughts and feelings going on, which to me proves the limitation, the problem is in the world. That's what resistance proves, because it separates you from what you're resisting. Resistance proves the situation sits outside of myself. We're looking at the nature of resistance as inseparable from this sense of self that sees it being impinged upon by the world. So here's a big key idea. You might want to write it down. So if what I'm saying is true, what is the real nature of resistance? Is it something that I should judge myself for, or is that resistance? Is resistance ever going to release me from the conditions that it blames? No. It can't do it. It's part of a closed system. So what would be the actual solution to this? It would be able to see the closed system. To see for myself that this moment of resistance marks the boundary of my present level of understanding. That's all this resistance is. It marks the boundary of my present level of understanding. I can only go so far with you, and then I run into this boundary that I blame on you. I can only be so peaceful, so happy, whatever it might be. I can only go so far with forgiveness, whatever it may be. And at that point, I run into this boundary. But the boundary is not in the moment itself. No moment has boundaries. A river doesn't have boundaries. Even the shore is part of its movement. So I'm in a constant place where I run into a boundary that is the result of my misunderstanding. And what do I turn to in those moments where I run into that boundary? Something that says it's outside that boundary and knows how to break out. It gives me a plan, a new project. It gives me something to do so that I can be someone who isn't feeling this incredibly threatened life. Boundaries are not failures. They are thresholds. Resistance to us, when we run into it, we bail. What do you think blame, anger, all of those things, what do you think all that's about? It's bailing. You bail on the moment. When you look for a solution to this problem, this energy, what happens? You're bailing on the moment. An example, someone upsets you. What is your usual response? Some form of defensiveness. We believe that this defensive reaction is a natural requirement to the condition we're in. No, the defensive reaction is the proof that I'm in a closed system, because the more I defend, the more you're offended by what I'm doing, and you get this push, so that resistance accelerates itself instead of being answered as it's intended to in another order of life, an unclosed system that you and I are intended to go into. Plus, and I must get this in, does the energy of anger ever do anything other than move in a binary fashion? The energy of anger is to defend or to attack. That's the energy of anger. Please see it with me. It's not mind science. My negative state, all it knows is one thing or the other. And it believes the other is going to change it. And the other never changes it because the other belongs to what is imagining it. So can that energy ever become anything other than part of that closed system? Can that energy ever be transformed? Don't you believe you are transforming the negative situation into a positive one when you resist the condition that brings up the conflict? I'm drilling down. No, the energy can't change because it's in a closed system. And me thinking I can change the negative energy by finding some place or person or thing to do outside of it doesn't exist outside of it. What I imagine is part of the closed system. Now, in the world, imagining a new business plan isn't part of a closed system. You might create something new and beautiful, but it's not going to change the consciousness trying to escape itself through acquiring what it believes will make it successful, because it's still in a boundary called the conditioned mind. The energy has to change, but the energy can't change and will not by itself. That's the whole point. The energy at every level recirculates. And it can't be transformed because it's simply going from one form into another. And none of the forms transcending the nature that creates them. So the task is to start understanding that here's this nature and what's it doing all the time. It's finding something outside, whatever it is, and it says, you don't understand. When I say you don't understand, and how many times does that happen? You know, it's so quick. You mustn't judge yourself. I had this thought this morning, just changing the pace a little bit. And God help us, because I know some of us have done it. Would you yell at a dog? Would you yell at a baby? Would you scream at a flower? Would you be impatient because the blade of grass was leaning to the left instead of the right? The problem with this idea that I'm going to share with you is that we emotionalize it, we sentimentalize it. But if everything is a tender moment, meaning if every relationship is a tender relationship, and it is, we just don't see it because we're brutes. We're brutes. But it isn't we who are brutes. It's this closed system called the psychological self that is a brute. It's a beast. It's a beast because all it knows to do is to try to change, fight with, or resist anything that challenges what it's identified with. That's its nature. And we don't know that we're identified with, that you're a walking, I haven't fleshed this out. Wherever I go, I have something that's not right. Why? Because this mind, this closed system never stops comparing what it has come into that moment looking for to validate it from what it says is outside of its system that has made it a victim. So validation and victim are part of a closed system that nature never knows. So it can't change. But you can see that nature. You can become literally conscious of the fact that here I am, and I'm starting to get angry. I'm starting to feel this impatience. What? Because this boundary, no, the boundary is my understanding. My boundary is the nature that walked me into and up to that moment. The boundary is who I've been. The boundary is time. The boundary is the past. And I don't know I'm a prisoner of it because the prisoner of the past projects a future where it won't be in trouble anymore. But it is the trouble. It doesn't make trouble. It is the pain. So how can I be at peace with pain? I can't unless it's possible to transcend that entire system. Transcend my own mind. Transcend the mind this world has made in me and that I participate in. Transcend the whole machination of my relationship to my culture, my environment, to every last part of what I'm a part of now. Because whether you see it or not, you have to be a part of this world. You can't be outside of this world. It's impossible. But I can be in it and not of it. So that I participate at a conscious level, not at a level of choices made for me by an unconscious nature. Can you see that? So if I realize the boundary where suddenly I'm in pain, what's the threshold? What's the real boundary? What's the real boundary in that moment? I can't take any more pain than that. Is it? Please, that's the boundary. Because I'm okay with you until. And when the until comes, it's because something energetic is producing this resistance in me. I've learned to sort of sublimate or, push this resistance down or become identified with being a Christ-like person who doesn't do stuff like that. And I'm okay, but you get me to a certain point, boom. Why? Because at that point, the threshold is as far as it can go, and just like the creature cornered, out it comes. Because I don't know what to do with the pain. I'm not at peace with my pain because I don't understand the nature of my pain. I'm not at peace with my pain because I don't understand its nature, and I can't understand the nature of my pain until I participate in the machinery that's producing it. If I don't understand the knee-jerk resistance I have, and again, you mustn't judge yourself. We're walking knee-jerks. If I don't understand it, no, I'll say it otherwise. To the depth of the possibility I have of understanding this resistance is the degree to which I'm released from the system that creates it. Because to understand it means at last I'm outside of the system, not thinking from inside the system how to get out, but outside the system, aware of its activity and therefore not subject, as I've always been, to its choices. I tried to allude to this yesterday. When resistance is seen and not condemned, not justified, when resistance isn't acted on, what happens? If you can get that far with me. Doesn't resistance seem, this is a necessity. Isn't it a necessity to make someone know what they did? Isn't it a necessity? Do you ever explain yourself to yourself? Even what's the necessity of explaining myself? Because the resistance has reached a certain point, and now all of that energy has to go somewhere. And that's quite literally what it does. It just spills it off. But if that resistance isn't condemned, I don't hate myself for hating. I don't judge myself for not being compassionate. I don't sit and think, boy, you're a terrible person because you're selfish. This is what the world does, and then the world builds a new morality around it by which it can transcend itself. And every moral of this world is the corruption and the continuation of that psychological nature that has to have psychological morals in order to get around and be decent to human beings. So if all of that resistance is not acted on, do you know what happens to it? First, what's acting on that resistance? It seems like it's me trying to escape it, doesn't it? But we see it's not me acting on it. Resistance is acting on itself. It's in a closed loop. And if I actually get a little glimpse of that, what happens to all of that energy, that sense of self that's derived from it? What happens to it? This is beautiful. It loses its necessity. I actually lose the feeling of necessity. Don't you think it's necessary to straighten out everything? I don't even like my room out of order. I'm obsessive compulsive. It's necessary for me to go straighten out the napkins. I'm speaking personally now. Right? Whatever that is, everything feels so necessary. Why? Because I'm necessary. That I is necessary for the perpetuation of the pain it says it's trying to release you from. And that's that I, that closed system. So if I start to actually see through the illusion of this necessity, I like that too. There we are. Wait, is that necessary? But what do I do if I'm not acting that out? What happens? Instead of participating in this closed system that reincarnates itself, where that energy is doing what? That energy is bouncing off the walls. And it says the wall it's bouncing off is you. Bouncing off the walls. So what happens when that energy is no longer bouncing off the wall and feeding into itself? In the moment that you see that, there's a flow instead of this trying to protect a freedom you'd imagine. That action completes itself without producing an opposite. That action, that resistance completes itself without producing an opposite. How does the resistance complete itself? It's already part of a complete system. It's already part of what is real. It's part of divine inevitability. It's part of natural inevitability. Resistance has a natural divine play. But for us, it's no longer even a question of is it a divine part of our life. It is the hell of our life that we blamed on the hell of a world that we're in. And it's not. So to understand this energy, all of this energy that I'm so busy making choices about how to escape, is not I making those choices, nor can the choices release me from that constant bouncing back and forth in that closed system. And this is why, what would be the word I want? This is why the moment of resistance, you can begin to recognize it as an invitation. So that instead of letting resistance tell you there's this, that they did this, he crossed that, she did, instead of the boundary that resistance creates, you break into a relatively boundless relationship with the moment and the reaction that is intended in this divine inevitability to produce a new creature, to bring about a new creation that you then are the instrument of, instead of being the instrument of this closed system with all of its conflict. That's called transformation. But the last point I would make is that, and I know this is difficult, it's not you transforming. It's not you transcending anything. It's you coming into a kingdom where transcendence and transformation belongs to another order, a system that isn't closed. And as you move up the scale of understanding of being, you enter into successive realms inwardly until you will have, and I think you've all had them, moments without resistance. There was nothing necessarily beautiful going on, but the moment was beautiful. There was nothing necessarily to be grateful for, but I was flooded with gratitude. Why? Because for a split second, that nature was transcended, meaning my awareness went into another order of itself and found a world where there were no boundaries. So use the boundaries that you feel to see the nature that is bound by its own activity. Use the boundaries that you feel to realize the nature that is bound by its own closed system. Seeing that sits outside of that closed system. And that's where the energy comes in from a new world and changes not the closed system, but your relationship to it, because you've come into another kind of consciousness that's no longer a captive of its own imagined boundaries. Let's take a break, and we'll come back and have our dialogue.
Yay, I can see myself. Hello, and welcome to our Q&A time now. Now is your time. If you're on the GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand in the panel there, and we will call upon you, and you can come on and speak with Guy directly. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can just send a question in the chat area, and Kate will relay it to me. I'll read it to Guy, and he will answer your questions. So let's get a nice cue going here, and I'm gonna first of all do something here. And then I've got one question, Guy, that I'll start with. I think you got to bring him on here. There you go. Let's just go ahead and start off with a question from Jordan that just came in. And Jordan says, how do I just leave myself alone? I can't. The more I try, the more I fail. I'm constantly analyzing everything I do. Before this work, I used to be in the flow. Now I'm constantly trying to watch myself.
See, Jordan, you have to question your own conclusions. I can help you do that if you're willing, but do you know that every person who has ever come a certain distance in terms of some form of new understanding, or at least the wish for it, every person says, you know, I was much better before I ran into this work, because I used to be in the flow. I used to be kind. I used to be patient. And since I started studying these ideas, I see that I'm not. And so I blame this work for what I call the realization of this limitation. This is where it takes honesty, Jordan. If I'm someone who's in the flow, and I know what the flow is, I just join the flow again. Why am I out of the flow? Who kicked me out of the flow? Nobody. What you call the flow was just a stream of mechanical thoughts and feelings justifying or otherwise excusing your relationships with people and places. I have 100,000 reasons why I should have a certain amount of money, why people should treat me in a certain way. I mean, whatever that, this is what it's okay. Suddenly I'm filled with this necessity. Now I need to know what's going on. Why didn't I need to know yesterday when I was busy worrying about what's going to happen? Why didn't I need to know what was going on when I was eating that slice of pizza? No. What I can't see is that conditions create the consciousness that meets them, and the consciousness that meets them can't be separated from the conditions that trigger that consciousness. So I'm always in the hands of a temporary identity, Jordan. I just don't know I'm in the hands of a temporary self. I think I wrote a book, I call this demanding self a commanding self. Here comes this moment, now I'm in the hands of this demanding self. What's it demanding? That you don't be this, that the world not be like that, because when you are or are not the way I want, suddenly you throw me out of the flow. You were never in a flow. For one thing, Jordan, there's no identity in a flow. There's no self that's part of a flow. What you call the self in a flow is a rock in a stream. Nothing keeps you out of the flow, Joe. Nothing keeps you out of the flow, Jordan, except for your idea of what it means to be in the flow, and that's it. And it's not your idea of what it means to be in the flow, Jordan. It is a nature that measures the moment and whether or not it's flowing according to the desires it has or not. And if it's not flowing according to an unseen, predetermined set of conditions my mind has come up with, if it's not flowing, then I'm stuck, I'm angry. and I've got answers and blame, all that stuff. And then I believe that my solution to the suffering is going to put me back into the flow. You are out of the flow when you are identified with anything at all, claiming to be caused by that condition. And lastly, you say, now I'm constantly trying to watch myself. Last question for you, Jordan. Are you constantly trying to watch yourself, or are you constantly trying to prove yourself? Am I constantly trying actually to discover the truth of myself as an observer, or am I constantly measuring what I see and then determining whether or not I've succeeded? Answer those questions. You'll see that what you are trying to do is to prove to yourself that you are someone as you imagine yourself being. That's called hell, by the way. I'm going to go on from here.
All right, thank you, Guy, for that. All right, we have no hands in the queue. Let's get some hands going. I don't know if Roger has it set up out there in Oregon where someone can come on and say something as well. I'm sure there's a group there. Also in the room here, you're welcome to get up and speak as well.
It's
Let's
fine,
just see what
Terry. It's fine. We don't have to fill the space with the sound of our voice. Oh, here comes somebody. Here comes Patricia.
I had to show it to me.
Well, there you are, sweetheart.
When I was listening to you, what really struck me is when you said, because I've experienced this over and over, and it's a beautiful moment, it's not necessary. It's not necessary to go into the resistance. And when you feel that it's not necessary to do it, it's like such a relief. A load has been let off. You don't have to go into a fight.
Right.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's something we should all be able to experiment with.
I would rephrase some of it
Okay.
just because it's interesting to look at. So, again, I just have to ask, the people in the room joining us here, I'm sitting at home and something I should do or I should have done. You said something and I feel the sudden need to respond or explain or to be defensive. I'm on my way to work and I'm going to be measured, or what do they do? What do they call it when you sit down with a supervisor? My review. Yeah. I'm under the constant pressure of a review. I feel like I'm always being reviewed. Yes or no? I'm filled with the necessity to succeed so that when I'm reviewed, I'm okay. Yeah. I mean, I feel the necessity to appear one way, to carry myself another, to make sure you understand what you don't. I feel the necessity to shine in a public moment. I feel the necessity to be special in my own eyes. I am a walking necessity.
Well, that's the thing. It's all this in our own mind.
Exactly.
It's all our own mind.
That's the whole point. Necessity doesn't exist at a spiritual level. There is a psychological necessity that you treat people, so forth, but the rest is all part of this closed system.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Guy, no questions. Nobody in the queue right now.
What if you never, ever again, for the rest of your life, doesn't mean you won't feel the pain of necessity? What if you never, ever again in your whole life feel like you have to prove one thing? Why do I feel the need to prove myself? Assuming everybody does in one way or another. I mean, isn't that what I argue with you about? You've challenged an assumption of mine. I have to prove you're wrong. When you get two people together, by and large, the one who wins is the one who puts the other person on the defensive most successfully. What do I have to prove? Isn't the whole notion of what I have to prove, doesn't it mean somehow I'm outside of a broader system inside of a system that my own mind, in quotes, has created, when the truth is this consciousness has been created by a culture and time that has brought about the whole idea of necessity. You know, what you and I think are necessary, you and I think is necessary today, 100 years ago didn't even occur to most people. I mean, it was like, they said, have you lost your mind? What's necessary is you need to go tend to what you are given to tend to. That's what's necessary. Not tend to everybody's business and that ensures that their business ensures yours. Oh, gosh. I can breathe it. I hope one day you can breathe it. My anxiety over not being enough, my fear of some limitation, that nature is a closed system that creates the anxiety and the boundaries that I feel are trespassed, and I'm never again, as long as I'm going to live, going to have to prove that I am. You can't prove that you are. You can only be what you are. You can't prove yourself. All of our life is about proving ourselves, the necessity of proving myself. That's pain. And when you have the pain of trying to prove yourself, then you have the pain, which is part of proving yourself, the struggle to make sure that you actually succeed in proving yourself. Now you require others to continue to see you as you have proven yourself. So you have to constantly be on guard to make sure they recognize you as you have proven yourself. It's just a closed system. Remember those, all the things that are invented in this world are actually ways in which people have seen certain aspects of our psychological or spiritual nature. And so what you see manifested in the world, for instance, the Pac-Man game, or that game of bong where people sit and hit ping pong balls back, that is the human mind. It's a closed system. But the strange thing is you get anxious playing yourself because you want to win. You've lost the moment you've set into a closed system because the sense of self derived from competing with yourself has blinded you to the fact that you can't win at competing with yourself. And even if you do win, it costs you. When I was a boy, it used to be you could play an arcade game for $0.25. Now you need they check your what do they call that? Your FICA score before you can go play some video game. Anyway, I'm off.
Thank you, Guy. All right, so we have one hand in the queue here and plenty of time, people. So we're going to go ahead and go to Rebecca here. Here you go, Rebecca.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I don't really have a question, Guy. I just always want to express just gratitude for the teachings, for the information and the teachings you provide. It lands on two very different parts of me. One part, the knowing part, and the other part, the villagers of eyes. And I often am left just not really knowing what to do. And then I say, yeah, because you're just not supposed to, but it's like, what are you seeing? And just having to trust that this entity is living out its life, however it's supposed to in the end. See, I don't even have words. That was a bunch of mishmash, but
good.
Just thank you so much for what you do.
I'm glad that you caught yourself tripping over your wisdom tooth. Leave it alone. I don't know who I am if I leave life alone. So my life is predicated on constantly pushing and pulling. I don't know who I am without something I want. I don't know who I am without hoping that I understand. And every last one of those eyes, every last bit of that identity is desperate. When Thoreau said that if we could see that humanity lives in the throes of a constant desperation, he wasn't exaggerating it. What he didn't say, or at least that I'm aware of and that we are working to understand here, is that the desperation belongs to a closed system trying to escape itself through ideas that belong in that system. So the desperation is accelerated. Really, that's a description of the way in which our civilization is collapsing, like a plate spinning on a table. The more desperate we become, the more desperate the actions, the more desperate the actions, the more confined we are by the creation of those actions. And as we see it all crumbling as we do, then we become more desperate to escape what we ourselves have been complicit in creating. And one day, individually, you will see this beyond the shadow of a doubt, that whatever that conflict is, you are complicit in creating it, that there is no opposite that exists apart from the nature that experiences it. And then that mind quiets, which is what you're after. That is, and it's not even you that's after it. The central urge of every atom is to return to its divine source. What is the divine source of every atom? It is the stillness from out of which it came. So on one hand, we have this entropic relationship with life where everything's speeding up and we're constantly trying to reach something. And on the other hand, inwardly, at the greatest depths of ourselves, there is something that is longing to come to a stop, to be still and to know without thought. It is that relationship between these two natures and which one it is that we give our attention to that determines ultimately not just the experience of this life, but whether we ever understand anything about a life that's not in time. On we go, Terry.
Thank you, Guy. All right, just so you know, right now it's 1:52 and we have one question and two hands in the queue. So just wanted to let you know where we're at. And next we're going to go to Hans. So Hans, I'm going to unmute you now.
Hi, Guy.
Hello, Hans.
During the talk, I got the feeling or impression that you were talking, that you gave a beautiful description of free will, and that like in the things I've read or studied, it seems there's always a question: do humans have free will, and to what extent do they have free will? And that what you described was, if we're stuck in the mechanical mind, we don't, but that free will is the ability to see that.
Yes.
And that was free will.
Yes. More accurately, and very difficult to describe in a short period of time here, but I promise I will go into it in much greater depth. Free will is when I won't participate in a closed system. The illusion of will is me making choices inside of a closed system.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Hans. All right, next we're going to go to somebody in Oregon. Not sure who, but I'm going to go ahead and unmute now. You just have to unmute on your end up there. There.
All right, can you hear me now?
Hi, Roger. Everybody here says hello.
Hey, everybody. Guy, again, I just wanted to express my gratitude for your talk. Something was reinforced in me that from my notes, I have to be there in the moment of resistance and see that it is an invitation to be something new. And your whole closed loop idea, I think, helped formulate that in me a little bit and nurture that idea. And again, very grateful for that. So, and that gives me a whole different perspective, that when that boundary is met, the reaction takes place because of the resistance, and correct me if I'm wrong in my thinking. And then at that point, to come together, like you talked about on the last Sunday talk, be there in the moment, the the hearing, the seeing, the sensing, and then just wait there.
Okay, so look, all that's good, but, and I know it seems contradictory, we have to go through what seems like these complicated ideas to arrive at the simplest understanding.
Mm-hmm.
This boundary appears when resistance creates it, so that the moment of feeling this resistance is the revelation not only of a boundary I didn't know was part of this consciousness, but that I didn't know was created by this consciousness. So that the suddenly feeling of that contraction, of that resistance, we must learn to thank God for it, because otherwise we would never know that there was a point in this psychological nature that is going to pop up when the resistance reaches this threshold. And the boundary, there's the boundary. The boundary isn't a limitation unless I protect it. And I would never protect something that separates me from life. A boundary separates me. Doesn't it? Don't boundary separate. But then I blame the suffering of that moment on you. You've separated me. The separation is itself the suffering. And I would never know that this nature separates itself out with all of these ideas, beliefs, conditions, unless there was something in me that suddenly revealed it. So to look at this resistance as the revelation of a boundary I was not aware of, that's all I have to do. I don't have to do one thing more than that. Just simply become aware, wow, I didn't know that was like that. I feel pain. Leave it at that. Something in you has seen the purpose of what that moment came to show you. I'm walking around. I'm like back in the old days when they had, claims, when the pioneers and everybody, I'm like a claims office. I'm a living claims office, and all I have to do is have somebody walk in and stake a claim on my part of whatever the territory is, and I got my shotgun and my stagecoach, and I'm off doing something. You get it. I'm off.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That clarified that a lot. I'm going to work with that. Thank you so much, Guy.
Yes. This way, Roger, and everybody, we can use resistance. I can learn about the nature of this pain instead of letting pain constantly tell me what's causing it. Resistance is the revelation of a boundary I did not know existed. Now I know it exists, and in the moment of the awareness of the boundary, I have an awareness of the nature that's created it. It's one fell glimpse.
Thank you for shedding that light, Guy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read a question that came in from Susanna. So when we feel any type of discomfort, resistance, anger, are we to stop and ask for guidance in whatever form, such as prayer, mantra, quiet moment? It has worked for me lately.
Always do the best you can, Susanna. You can't be asked to do any more than you understand. If that's my understanding, let me apply it. And when that understanding, as it must necessarily so, proves itself incomplete, then I'll have a new understanding that that action is incomplete. And then gradually, Susanna, and I know you feel this, you don't grasp it yet, at last, I'll stop looking for an explanation for my suffering. I won't ask myself, why did that happen? I won't judge someone because something took place and it brought up this resistance in me. So in essence, I won't have to stop and ask for guidance at all, because the guidance is in the moment. The light is revealing the boundary and boundary maker, and that's the source of the pain and its continuity. That's what it's doing. Christ, the living light, is revealing the content of my consciousness to myself. What other guidance do I need in that moment? I've got the best guidance there is. And it doesn't get better than that. And the problem is that for us, we can't sink our teeth into that. So do the best you can. And just be honest. That's it, Terry, unless you got anything else going on.
No, we're at the top of the hour. We have no hands in the queue and no more questions. So thank you, everyone, and a very Merry Christmas to everyone. And just a reminder that we'll be discussing this talk this coming Friday on our study group, which is at 6 p.m. Pacific time and 9 p.m. Eastern time, if you're listening from the East Coast. All right. Well, we will see you. Oh, there looks like, oh no, that's something else. All right, so we'll see you next time.
Terry, hold on 1 second. Am I still on? Almost always every year for the last, 40 years, there's been a Christmas talk, a message at Christmas. It doesn't fall that way on the calendar, and our things are different now, but on the 28th of December, I do have some special material, a Christmas message. So if you want to join me on the 28th, I would strongly recommend it. We won't have a Christmas tree, and there won't be lights, and there'll be no, we wish you, instead we will wish you an awakened life, and we'll do the work required to bring ourselves into a system that's not closed. Be well.
Great.
Merry
Look
Christmas.
forward to that.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, everyone. See you next time.